Our next big astrology shift of 2025 is Uranus entering Gemini on July 7th for the first time in 84 years. Uranus was last in Gemini from 1941 to 1949. And obviously the world is a drastically different place with this new cycle. So let me break it down, a few of the themes and things to be aware of as Uranus enters Gemini and will stay in the sign until November 8th. Then Uranus goes back into Taurus and returns to Gemini next April 2026. So here in 2025, we're basically going to get a sample of the energies and what Uranus is going to mix up, where there's going to be more changes, disruptions, things that are changing drastically, and also how it's going to be affecting the Gemini areas of our lives. Gemini rules communications, transportation, education, our everyday experiences. Gemini involves the people you interact with on a daily basis. It's the energy of what you're thinking and saying and what's grabbing your attention. Gemini is fast moving, restless. The mind is very busy. There can be a lot to think about. The mind can be too busy. There can be anxiety, overthinking, worry, even about all the options, all the possibilities. And Uranus is going to come through and activate that even more. Uranus being a very electrifying energy, very dynamic, unexpected. There's shock value with Uranus. And in fast-moving Gemini, there can be quicker messages, more insights, brilliant breakthroughs. But it can also take a toll on our nervous system, our energy bodies, and our minds, where it could be harder to settle, to calm, to detach. So those will need to be practices that we pull in and implement as Uranus moves into Gemini, activates more that we want to say, think, look at. Also bring up how we have unconscious habits that we keep turning to if we're bored, or if there's a slowdown, or if something is occurring and we don't want to think about it. So, you just grab your phone and start scrolling. This is going to be something to stay mindful of, because Uranus and Gemini being very fast moving and dynamic, we can actually be out of touch with how we're using our mind, what we are focusing on. And again, these unconscious habits that we just turn to, because now we're used to seeking information and receiving stimuli. So our minds and our mental bodies are going to be very active. This will also relate to the nervous system. So we're going to need to pull in intentional calming practices. Now, Gemini is mutable air, and in the body, Gemini relates to not only both of the brain's hemispheres, but both arms, hands, and also the lungs, both lungs. So I think of it as when life moves quickly and we're, clipping along and used to things happening, we can be unconsciously breathing shallow breathing. We're going to have to intentionally work on deeper breathing, filling up the lungs' capacity, slowing down our breathing patterns, making sure enough oxygen gets to the brain, and allowing ourselves to experience a full breath, just as a way to calm down the fast-moving energies here and to be more conscious of how we're experiencing them. A few other things to share with you that actually relate to more of the real world with this Uranus entering into Gemini. It does relate to how the new technologies are going to be permanently changing and advancing our cities, our schools, and the places we go on a daily basis. So this would mean, astrologically, that this school year, that at least here in the US will start in August or September, when Uranus is in Gemini, is going to be a very different school year than kids have ever known. There's going to be more technologies in the classroom, more available to them, access to more information. Perhaps things move along faster, or there's the expectation that there will be more to do, more to think about. There's going to be changes in education with Uranus and Gemini, and this is already happening, but now it's going to be something that is implemented and used. And of course, we want there to be the pros and advantages of these advancements, but there's always the cons and disadvantages as well. I know that just during summer break here in my world, they were offering summer camps that used AI, which I said, no, we're not doing that. There are more of these types of technologies now being integrated. There was recently the revelation of thousands of college students in the UK using AI, and it was a huge plagiarism scandal. It brings up new ethical issues, new moral issues. How do you regulate? How do you place an ongoing emphasis on human intelligence if artificial intelligence is faster, smarter, better? So these are some of the bigger overarching themes that we're entering into. And this school year is where we're going to see. We're going to see not only more of these technologies coming into educational environments, but then we're also going to see the pushback. So this is going to be a school year of new technologies, new learning methods, and the pushback of what is best or what is traditional or what is still useful. And then if we look ahead to later in 2026 and beyond, 2026 to 2033, is when it all starts to move so much faster. So that's a heads up that education will be feeling more of these advancements, changing perhaps various practices in classrooms, bringing in more learning tools, expanding what students have access to. And I'm just speaking in broad terms because it's different based on where you're at and what type of school environment a student is in. But Gemini rules education. And so here comes Uranus disrupting what has been and bringing up a lot more to consider and understand. Another theme that's coming in here with Uranus and Gemini is how these new technologies and machines and robots are going to be changing our everyday environments in ways that we can't quite see right now. But it's important to have a big picture perspective and to ask questions when you're in certain environments and spaces. Here are my examples. I was recently at an airport, and after security, the most important place is the coffee stop. Long lines of people waiting to get their coffee. Behind the counter, about 10 people, 10 employees making coffee, fulfilling orders from the apps, making orders for everyone in line, nonstop, right? And you're waiting 2, 3, 4 minutes for your coffee. Do you think in 3, 5, and 8 years, there's going to be 10 people behind a coffee counter making coffee? Or do you think there's going to be machines that are more efficient and cost effective that are used? Press a few buttons, you get your coffee, faster, cheaper, less labor involved, and that becomes the new norm. There's already places like that. There's already places where, for example, when I was in France and we stopped at a roadside rest area, has all the things you'd expect, the restrooms, the gift shop, the food places, and then the coffee section was this L-shaped area with machines. You put in your €2 and you just press some buttons to get your cappuccino, to get your latte, whatever it is. So there was no personnel working the coffee section. It was already automated. So then you take those understandings of how a service can be performed or how a good can be delivered. And of course, knowing that businesses are going to be making choices based on these advancements. What I'm getting at is it's important to go into environments right now and look at, can this be automated? Will this be automated? How is this going to change with the advancements that are happening with technology? I took my son to a restaurant a few months ago because he wanted to go to a restaurant that had a robot serving the tables. And so we did, and the robot came over to our table. You press the buttons to place your order, number 12, number 14, whatever you're ordering. And then, of course, that robot transmits it right to the kitchen. And then the robot goes back to pick up the food, and the robot has these trays. So the food is placed on the robot's tray, and then it just comes right back to your table and delivers the food to your table. There's not a lot of those around where I live. There really isn't. There's probably, that I know of, I think there's like 2. But how fast does that change? How quickly are more robots implemented into areas of service, hospitality, tourism? And perhaps you've seen examples of this in your area or even on social media, right? These videos of humanoids and robots and what they're doing. And there's one that was cleaning the whole restroom, folding the laundry, all these things that have been developed and have been in development are going to be entering into our everyday lives with Uranus and Gemini. So one thing you want to be aware of as you go into your everyday spaces, it would be great to be a big picture thinker who asks, would this be automated? Would there be a machine here? And I'm not saying there should be. I'm not even for that. I want people to have jobs. I want there to be a sense of connection in these environments. Like coffee shops have been for connection. Even if you don't know anyone, there's other people there, or you're working, you're friendly with the barista, or you're aware of, the people you're interacting with. But this is changing those energies. So this is a time to have a heads up on how these environments are going to change, and that it's very possible, it could certainly be already tested in the background and then slowly implemented, because part of bringing in these new technologies is that a company doesn't want to lose customers. So they bring it in as a novelty or something to just try out and see how it goes. It's a testing ground. So that's going to be part of what we're going to see. 2025 especially, and then 2026 and beyond. It's going to be more rampant. It's going to be introduced more quickly. It's going to be something that we just see. And I think too about how there's already these self-checkout lines and self-checkout experiences that are all automated. This is going to be part of what Uranus and Gemini brings in to our spaces, our everyday environments, and our interactions. So just some things to think about and be aware of here. We'll be talking about this even more since it's such a big deal. But I just wanted to bring up some areas to stay aware of. And if you are seeing some of these developments in your neighborhood, city, town, I would love to hear about them in the comments below. And it might be nice for other people to hear as well what you are seeing with these new technologies. So thank you for joining me as always. I'll be back soon with another video here on YouTube, and we will continue discussing these big energies of 2025.